Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of Theosophy Pure and Simple. I'm an independent student of the philosophy of Theosophy, and thank you for joining me as we investigate the original teachings of the Theosophical movement as recorded in the writings of H.P. Blavatsky and William Q. Judge. So today we're going to talk about what's called the three fundamental propositions of the secret doctrine. And before we get into it, we just want to mention that the reason why it's important to know what these three fundamental propositions as we look at life through theosophical lenses is because the more we clearly understand these ideas and put them into practice, the more we'll understand about the philosophy of Theosophy, and the more we will be able to interpret life around us. So the first proposition is related to that idea of God that is presented by so many good folks as, God being an infinite being who is the creator of the universe, who stands over it and watches it and directs it. This is the first idea that Theosophy challenges, this idea of a being external to the universe who created the universe. Rather, Theosophy views that the source of all is an infinite, deific, omnipresent, universally diffused, deific principle. We refer to it sometimes as deity, and we typically avoid using the word God simply because it conjures up in the mind a person external to the universe. Rather, Theosophy teaches that the universe is the universe and everything is natural. So the only thing that we can say about this deific principle, sometimes we even refer to it as the absolute, the essence, is that it is. That's what we can say. We can say it is. We can, by analogy, perhaps grasp the idea of the deific principle simply by thinking of space. How so? Well, everything exists in space. The human mind cannot think of anything that isn't in space. Therefore, it's reasonable to say that space is everywhere universally. But it's a useful analogy for understanding deity because space is not dependent upon anything in it, but everything in space is dependent on space for its existence. Therefore, with or without stuff, space still is. And with or without the manifested universe, deity still is. But one last thing we can say is that on a periodic basis, the universe manifests out from within deity and periodically is drawn back into this deific principle. So the first proposition is the idea of deity, universal. The second proposition of the secret doctrine is the idea of law, that everything manifests into creation, as we'll call it, under law, rather than manifesting as a result of an external God forming it or fashioning it. So this process occurs on a periodic basis and periodically manifests universally and then withdraws from manifests. So it might be helpful to imagine this in terms of really as above, so below. The idea of cycles, periodic manifestation, occurs on a cyclic basis, and there are cycles all over, everywhere we look in the world and in our lives. There is the sun cycle and the moon cycle. We have the cycle of seasons through the year. Also, within the human body, we have the cycle of our heart. We have the in-breath and the out-breath of our lungs continuous. It's a continuous cycle for our entire lives. the cycle of the electron going around the nucleus of an atom, of the moon around the earth, and the earth around the sun, as above, so below. The tides of the oceans occur how? In cycles. So this idea of cycles as a proposition fundamental to understanding everything else in the philosophy of Theosophy is important because, in particular, this law applies to man in karma. Karma simply is translated literally. We understand it means action, but it's a better idea for the Western mind to interpret the word karma as action and reaction, or cause and effect. So then what we're saying is that it is the law of cycles which governs the causes and the effects of everything we experience and everything that we do in this life. If we think about it, this idea of karma is found in all the world's religions. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We talk about the golden rule. Also, there's St. Paul. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man sows, so that shall he also reap. So this idea of karma is found in all of the world's religions. It's not just an Eastern idea, it's a universal idea. But it's much more easy to understand the idea of karma if we think about it in terms of karma as a doctrine and a sister doctrine to it being reincarnation. Now, reincarnation and karma we call twin doctrines. You really can't fully understand one without understanding the other, because there are so many things that occur to us in life which ultimately we are responsible for, but typically it's very hard to accept responsibility sometimes because we can't imagine, why does this bad thing happen to me, this good person? If we understand the idea of reincarnation and realize that this is not the only life we've lived, but rather is one of a very, very, very long series of lives that we live and we will continue to live until we've learned every lesson that this planet has to offer, so we've heard, then we can more reasonably accept the good things that come to us that we really wonder, gee, do I deserve this? I mean, I'm so grateful that I have it, but what did I do to deserve this? Well, anything that comes to you, you deserve, because you've created it. In other words, you've created the causes to set it up, and what you receive is the effect of those causes. Those causes that you set up might have happened yesterday, last week, 20 years ago, or might have happened in a previous life, perhaps the last life, or perhaps 5 lives ago. We can't always know those answers. But what we can, if we investigate and philosophically consider it and investigate the philosophy of Theosophy, we can come to find that it is psychologically healthier for every human being to look at his situation and realize whatever it is that's on my plate, I'm responsible for it. And if I don't like it, I've got the fruits of my actions. Maybe there's things I still need to learn to change the causes, to change the effects that come to me. And even if it has occurred in a previous lifetime, it's still mine, because in that previous life, really, that's just a different body. It really was me, who I am, that was in that body, setting up those causes, and who is now reaping the effects. So that's karma, and as we said, reincarnation is hand in hand with karma, and will continue on and on, as we said, until we learn all the things that this world has to teach us, and then we'll move on to, as we understand it, newer, greater, and higher worlds than this. The third proposition that we're talking about is evolution. And when in Theosophy we talk about evolution, we're not talking about evolution, just physical evolution, but rather evolution physically, intellectual evolution, and spiritual evolution. And we'd like to emphasize that theosophically speaking, evolution does not start with a thing, a form, with an amoeba or with some single-celled organism that grows into a reptile and grows into a rat and eventually becomes an ape and eventually evolves into. That's not evolution we're talking about. We're not talking about survival of the fittest. We're talking about evolution as in everything first is not the form, but rather is life. And life is universal, and life exists on every at and in every point in the universe, and there is the potential for every point to evolve into the highest conceivable. Now, we bring this up simply because the evolution that occurs when we tell you, you may have heard the idea of the rock becomes a plant becomes an animal becomes a human, and a human becomes a god. And we think maybe there was a book we read on the Kabbalah that talked about that. Theosophy helps us understand more clearly that such evolution is the evolution or the progress, the evolution of intelligence, which informs the rock, which informs the vegetable, which informs the animal, is always flowing, moving, progressing, evolving through the forms, and is what gives the form, the matter, its form. So there's a big difference in the energy, so to speak, of which informs an animal than that which informs rock. But everything is always working its way up. That's evolution, evolving through the kingdoms of nature. And this occurs, here's the thing though, this occurs universally according to a natural impulse. Plants, animals, minerals, if there are kingdoms below, that they occur according to natural impulses within the forces of nature. But that's not the case at the level of the human being. The human being does not evolve according to natural impulses, universal impulses, so to speak. Rather, the human being evolves according to his own self-induced resources, his own self-developed methods. The human being is responsible for his own evolution. So we call this the pivotal doctrine in Theosophy, when responsibility is transferred from the universe for the evolution of all the kingdoms below the human beings. Up to the human being, responsibility pivots to the individual human being himself. And that's because the human being is a microcosm of the macrocosm. The human being is a universe into himself. Everything, every force, every power, every faculty within great nature lies within the human being in potential, latent, but it waits to be awakened. Another way to say that, perhaps, is every faculty, every energy, every potential that lies within the human being, we see in greater nature, is an operation of nature. And so evolution is the purpose for all of this. The evolution of soul. Everything from the atom to the sun, everything behind the veil of matter, everything is spirit and soul, ever evolving under the rule of law that's inherent in the whole.